Hiya peeps, this is the Miss Class video for the week of, looks like November 16th to November 23rd. And let's go through it. So we started investigation 3, which is all about cells. And our first week is focusing on plant cells. So what's the deal with these plant cells? Let's take a look. And we focus on a plant called Elodea. It's an aquatic plant, which means it lives in the water. So what are we learning about for this investigation? We're learning about how every organism is made of one or more cells. We're learning about how cells are living and they do all of the characteristics of life. And we're learning about the parts of a cell and the job each part does. Why is it important to learn about cells? Well, every living thing on Earth is made of cells. Cells are how living things eat, breathe, reproduce, and heal, and many more things are reliant on cells. Learning the parts of cells and what they do helps us to understand how all living things manage to do all of the characteristics of life. And when we understand how cells function, we also learn about how these little tiny microscopic structures are busy at all times, working to keep us healthy and alive. And the final project for this investigation is a project called Cell City Project. It's an analogy, which means a comparison of two things that are alike in some way. So you're going to be creating an analogy to explain how a cell is like a city. Or you could do a cell is like a farm. That's where you get to be a little creative with what you want to do for your analogy. A cell is like a factory. A cell is like a school. Whatever you want to do for your analogy. Keep that in mind because that's what our goal is. That's what we're reaching towards at the end of the investigation. Your first step is to complete a survey about how do you think investigation 2 went for you. So do that first, please. And then we do an Elodea observation. We take a look at what the Elodea plant looks like. And we talk about if we've ever seen anything like it before. Some people have seen it in like a fish tank or at a pet store or in like a lake, a pond. It's a freshwater plant. It's very common in fish tanks. And then we use the virtual microscope. We observe what does the Elodea look like under the microscope. You have to select Elodea leaf. And it's really blurry. You have to bring it into focus by turning the coarse focus adjustment. And we start to see, whoa, it looks like tiles. And as I focus down, I can see a different pattern of tiles. So here's like a big tile and some green blobs inside. Looks kind of weird, like glass window almost with green blobs. And then as I focus more, I see a different pattern of tiles. Each time you see a different pattern of tiles, you're looking at a different layer of tiles. And they're not actually tiles. But I'm just calling it that because that's what it looks like. So when it asks you, what do they look like? How many layers do you see? You're looking for those patterns of tiles. How many patterns do you see? That will be your answer. Okay. Then are the boxes empty? What do you see inside of them? When we take a look, we notice that they're not empty at all. They are busy place. Lots of little structures moving around. And we don't know what these are, but they're green blobs. Some kids said maybe these are cells. Some kids said maybe these are chloroplasts, or they look kind of like plates. They're very flat and round. Those were all good observations. And then we watch this final video, and there's a lot of activity in this one. It's even more zoomed in. It's even more magnified. And we can see that there is a whole buzz of activity inside of these cells. Or these tiles, I guess, is what, bricks, whatever. I kind of just told you that they're cells, and that's fine. Whole buzz of activity of some little creature, or we thought maybe it was gas bubbles. We really couldn't know for sure what it was. But a lot of activity once we can really zoom in and see what's going on inside these cells. There's a lot going on. So you'll go back and you'll explain what you saw. And then we will talk about what's in a plant cell. So this is a plant cell. See how it's like a brick or a tile? It has a very rigid outer layer, which is called a cell wall. It has an inner membrane, cell membrane, which is a very intelligent cell structure. It actually is very intelligent. It allows certain things to enter the cell. It says, oh, I like you. Yeah, sure, come on in. And it keeps some things out. It would try to keep any sort of foreign invaders out, any viruses or any bacteria, if it could. And so the cell membrane is very intelligent. It allows food to come in and gases to come in and gases to go out and waste to go out. So it's a pretty incredible thing. That's the cell membrane. All cells have a cell membrane, but only plants and a couple other little organisms have a cell wall. It makes it very rigid. It makes plants very sturdy and strong. So you think about like a tree, it's a lot more sturdy than you in many ways because you don't have cell walls. If you did, you might look more like a Lego character or a Minecraft character, kind of blocky. And you don't look like that. So after cell membrane and cell wall, you can fill those in here. And we thought of an analogy to kind of a way for us to remember and kind of hold on to these terms, which are brand new and very sciencey and confusing. And so we said the cell membrane is kind of like a wall around the city or border patrol or security, letting some things in, keeping some things out. Cell wall, we said it was like an armor or shield or shell. The central vacuole is this big, giant structure holding water, sometimes other substances. But in this case, it holds water for a plant. And if you've ever seen a wilted plant, then you're seeing a plant with cells that are empty. They have central vacuoles that are empty of water. And then once you water it, the vacuoles will be able to fill back up and it'll look plump and healthy again. So water storage, and we said maybe a water bottle or a water tank. Okay, the next structure is called a chloroplast. Here, these are those green blobs that we were seeing in the Elodea, which I have to go back to show you again. All those green blobs are chloroplasts. It's the reason why plants look green, and it's the reason why plants are so unique, because they do photosynthesis. We don't. We are not green, right? If I could do photosynthesis, I would. I think that would be a really cool way to get energy. But I can't. I don't have chloroplasts in my cells. I don't have these green blobs, or I would look pretty green, like that character from I can't think of it. You probably are thinking of it right now. All right, cell structure that does photosynthesis. And what is photosynthesis? It's an amazing process. It converts sunlight, and then it sort of, you have the sunlight coming in to your chloroplast, and you have this special molecule called chlorophyll, which gets excited by the sunlight, gets energized, and that energy allows it to break the bonds in carbon dioxide and break the bonds in water, and it mixes them up and turns it into sugar for a plant to eat, plant food, basically. So that's why photosynthesis is so incredible. They have these special little engineered structures that are able to mix up carbon dioxide and water and turn it into something that's yummy and useful. And basically all animals rely on this process, because even if you don't eat plants, I'm sure you do, but if you don't eat plants, you eat animals that eat plants. So, I mean, photosynthesis is kind of like everything. It's very, very important. And our analogy for that was we thought it was kind of like a factory with solar panels that makes food. So I thought that was a great analogy. The kids were coming up with such great analogies for this. Okay, cytoplasm. Cyto means cell. Plasm means liquid. It's a jelly-like substance that's inside the cell. It holds all the cell structures. The cell is not empty. It doesn't have air in there. It's full of this jelly substance. Everything's kind of floating around in it. And so If you look, you can't see it. Obviously, it looks just like space, but all cells have cytoplasm inside. Even if you're a bacteria cell or an animal cell or a fungal cell, you're going to have cytoplasm inside. And the analogy, we thought, since it kind of holds everything, we were thinking like the cement foundations of a city. Or even some people said roads, which works too. All right, the next thing, this was got kind of funny because we were talking about what does endoplasmic reticulum look like? And we said, whoa, it looks like spaghetti. And then someone brought up the fact that the nucleus is like a giant meatball, and now I can't unsee it. So we've got spaghetti and meatballs, but what are they actually doing for the cell? Well, the meatball, the nucleus, is like the brain of the cell. It actually contains the DNA. DNA is like so important for biology and for you and for me and for a tiny little bacteria. The DNA is what makes us who we are, right? It's our blueprint, and it's inside every single cell in our bodies. And so it tells our cells how to be and what to do. And are you a hair cell or are you a muscle cell? And what is the sort of skin tone and eye color and hair color and height? Everything, right? DNA is so important. Anyway, so it's in the nucleus, right? Around the nucleus is this thing called the endoplasmic reticulum, the spaghetti. But what does it do? Well, it takes orders from the nucleus. It takes its orders from the nucleus, okay? It's like sort of like minions or like a assistant, or I don't know, something like that. And what it's doing is it's pumping out proteins and it's pumping out parts of the cell membrane. So it's getting a lot of work done for the nucleus and with the instructions of the nucleus. So we said a structure that makes proteins and parts of the cell membrane. And we said vice president. But there's a lot of analogies that other people had for this, which I thought were super great. Construction workers. They're building stuff, right? They're building proteins. They're building parts of the cell membrane all over the city. So either one of those things works. Okay. Next thing is, well, we also actually just talked about the nucleus. So if you want, you could fill that in now. Controls all cell activities because it holds the DNA. So we said president, which I think is a good analogy. If you're doing a city, then maybe you would say mayor. Okay, what's the mitochondria? It says here it makes energy, ATP, from sugars. Mitochondria is interesting. It looks kind of like a jelly bean. There's a lot of them actually in the cell. And it does. It makes energy in the form of this tiny little energy molecule called ATP. And ATP is important for a cell because it allows all the cell structures to get little zaps of energy so that they can go about their little cell structure lives and doing what they need to do. Those little zaps of energy are like little sips of espresso or caffeine, and it allows all the different structures to just keep functioning. Why does it need to be a tiny little molecule? Well, these structures are very, very small. And if you eat a cheeseburger, you're going to get energy from that cheeseburger in your stomach and through your blood. It's going to break down. It's going to form energy molecules like glucose, sugar, other carbohydrate molecules, proteins, lipids. A cell likes those things. It likes the sugar that comes from your food, but sugar is a big, bulky molecule. And these teeny little cell structures don't know what to do with big, bulky sugar molecule. It's too big for them. So the mitochondria is like this little furnace that takes the sugar, yum, 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 but then it breaks it down through a process called cellular respiration, which you don't need to go there yet, but I'm just saying the words. Turns it into these little ATP molecules, zap, 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 and then it sends it out all around. Here you go. Here's a little sip of espresso. ATP, ATP, ATP to all the different cell structures. Okay. We said credit cards. I don't know. It was like fast cash, we were thinking. It's like easy to use. But an espresso or a Starbucks, that would work too. All right, we already did nucleus. And the last thing is ribosome. It makes proteins. Proteins, it's not just like chicken and fish. Proteins for a cell are really what makes things happen. Proteins are the movers and the shakers of the cell. Proteins make things happen inside the cell and outside the cell. It's how cells communicate. it's very, very important. So we said the workers or the people or citizens, right? A city is nothing without its workers or citizens. And that's kind of like a cell. It's nothing without its proteins. And the ribosome is this little tiny cell structure that pumps out proteins. Look, they're all over. And in fact, there's a lot of them on the ER, on the endoplasmic reticulum, which is why it also makes proteins, because it's covered in part by ribosomes. So I know all of this sounds kind of crazy and like, oh my gosh, super sciencey mumbo jumbo, and you haven't heard it yet. This is your first time hearing it. So it's going to sound very crazy and weird, but you'll get used to it because we're going to be talking about it for a few weeks. All right, the last part of this science notebook compares Elodea and brine shrimp and the characteristics of life. So does Elodea need energy? Yes, it does photosynthesis. Does it need water? Yes, it needs water in order to do photosynthesis. Plus, it lives in water. Does it grow? Yes, Elodea grows. It actually sort of buds off and reproduces that way by cloning itself. Reproduction, I already kind of just explained that. It makes new shoots. Suitable environment, yes, they need fresh water. They can't live in salt water. Response to stimuli, yes, they respond to changes around them. They would respond to water loss. They would respond to sunlight. They would respond to different gases in the environment.
Nope, that is not for you, hon.
Does a plant exchange gases? Yes, it takes in CO2 and it eliminates oxygen, which is really convenient for all the animals out there, including us, right? We need oxygen and we eliminate CO2. And does it eliminate waste? Yes, it eliminates oxygen. And that's a waste product that we really couldn't live without. Finally, is it made of cells? It is made of plant cells. Okay? There's one final thing for you to do. Watch this video about the discovery of cells and then submit your project or your notebook on Schoology. And that's it for the week. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week for a short week before Thanksgiving break.
That's yuck. That's garbage. Yuck. That's all garbage. Yuck.